Erev Tov, Chodesh Tov. So it's Rosh Chodesh Adar, so it's a good time to start talking about Purim. Maybe before we get to Purim itself, we have a few halachot, a few things which come up just before Purim. As we know, this Shabbat we read Parshat Shekalim, the Shabbat that's just passed. Parshat Shekalim, we also have the mitzvah of the custom of Zechel Machatzit Shekel, which is related. It's all the same thing. We'll talk about that a little bit and some interesting things which come out of it. So Parshat Shekalim is the first, as we know, of what's called the Arba Parashiot. The 4 Parashiot which we have Parshat Shekalim, which we've just had. We skip a week and then we have Parshat Zachor, Parshat Parah, Parshat Chodesh. Right? These are four Shabbatot on which we have a special reading. We take out a second Sefer Torah. Sometimes, if it falls out on Rosh Chodesh as well, we'll take out 3 Sefer Torah. And the truth is, this reading, these 4 Parashiot, it actually goes back. It's older than our custom in terms necessarily of the way that we split up the Parashiot. I mean, we know that the Torah was given with Parashat Tuchot and Stumot, but the division that we have Parshat Shavua of 54 Parashiot, it wasn't always read that way. We know that was the minhag in Bavel, was to read the Torah every year. The minhag in Eretz Yisrael was to read the Torah to finish only once every 3 years. Parashot was shorter. It was easier to do Shnai Mikra once upon a time. But the Arba Parshiot that, sorry. So the Arba Parshiot that's already mentioned in the Mishnah. That goes back further. We've been doing that. And the Gemara has a discussion. First of all, when we read the Arba Parshiot, Machloket Amoraim, does that Parshat Shekalim or Zachor or whatever it is, does that come in place of Parshat Shavua, or does that come in addition to Parshat Shavua? There is an opinion in the Gemara that says you have this Parsha. That's all you would read. It would just be Shekalim, and that's it. It's not our practice. That's not the way Halacha is paskin. But it's interesting to note that comes up. And then the question is, when do we read it, and how do we read it, and how do we split up the reading? So again, as you know, we take out 2 Sefer Torah. We read from the first Sefer Torah from the Parsha, 7 Aliyot, as we would every Shabbat. And then the Maftir, which normally we would go back and read the last few psukim of the Parsha which we've read. Instead, we go in, we read from whichever one of the Arba Parashiot it is. There is an opinion in the Rishonim. That's again not the way we paskin, but there is an opinion that says actually the 7th of the Aliyot would be you wouldn't wait till Maftir, but the 7th of the Aliyot, you would go and you would read that. That's what the Meiri says, but that's not the way we paskin. In any event, interesting question which comes up is the following. Question which came up. This is what the Or Sameach was asked 140 years ago, as follows. So, Parshat Shekalim we read either on Rosh Chodesh Adar, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbat, or as it does this year, Rosh Chodesh is midweek, so we proceed at the preceding Shabbat. If Rosh Chodesh was to fall on Shabbat, so then we know we wouldn't have just 2 Sefer Torah, we would have to take out 3, right? And the first Sefer Torah we would finish the Parsha instead of 7 Aliyot in 6 Aliyot. Then you would have these next one you would read for Rosh Chodesh, and then you would read for, which would be the 7th Aliyah, and then the Maftir you would read from Parshat Shekalim. Why Rosh Chodesh before Shekalim? Because Tadir v'Sheino Tadir. Right? We have one mitzvah which is more frequent, which is more common, that takes priority in a sense over one which is less common. So this is the case that happened 140 years ago. It's brought in the Or Sameach. Very interesting. It doesn't appear in Shut, but it appears in Or Sameach, which is Rav Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, who's also the author of the Meshech Chochma. He writes this in his commentary to the Rambam. He brings this case. He says that if you look at the calendar 140 years ago, you'll see that year Rosh Chodesh Adar was on Shabbat, and the Parsha that week, so it was Parshat Shekalim on Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, and it was also Parshat Pekudei. Parshat Pekudei, meaning that it was the last Parsha of the Chumash, the final Parsha of Chumash Shmot, Chazak, Chazak, V'nitchazek. So here was the question. In this community in Dvinsk, they had sold the aliyot on Simchat Torah. You know, there are places where they have the minhag to sell the aliyot every week. There are places where Simchat Torah, they sell the aliyot for the entire year. Maybe this is why you shouldn't do it. So he says like this. There were 2 people who had purchased their aliyot for the year. Right? Not just any aliyot. Right? You've got to give them the mechubad ones. So there was one person who had bought for the entire year the aliyah lifnei acharon. right? The one before. When a person walks into shul, they say, "Are you a Kohen?" He says, "No, I'm a Shishi." Right? He was this person had purchased for the entire year all of the aliyot bifnei acharon. So the second last aliyah, that was his. Then there was another individual who had purchased. I'll go one better for you. I wanted to have the last. I'm not a Shishi. I'm a Chazak. Right? The last aliyah of each chumash. The last aliyah of each sefer. So normally there's no problem. Why? Because the last aliyah is going to be Shvi'i, that's the last person who gets called up. This guy gets his Shishi every week. This guy gets the end of Chazak of Bereshit Shmot, Vayikra, etc. Fine. But what happened on the Shabbat? So let's think about it. It's Parshat Pekudei. So Shabbat Chazak. So normally that Chazak would be the seventh aliyah. But here, because it was also Rosh Chodesh and also Shekalim, so therefore the seventh aliyah was the reading of Rosh Chodesh. And if Shekalim. No. It was on Rosh Chodesh, right? So you had the reading. The seventh aliyah was the reading of Rosh Chodesh, not HaChodesh, but it was from Parshat Pinchas, and then you had the reading of Parshat Shekalim. So what?
It was a leap year. That's why it's a leap year.
Yeah, fair. The point was, so you had the sixth, the final reading, the Chazak, was actually the sixth aliyah, which was also the reading before the aliyah lifnei acharon. So both of them came and claimed, this is my aliyah. This is what I purchased. So who gets it, right? So Rabbi Simcha goes through very, very interesting sources where you're going to find the answer to this question. So he has a little bit of a back and forth. And he brings three different sources to see, all from different places throughout Shas, who should get the aliyah. So the first idea he says is as follows. He brings it in Chosh and Mishpat. This is in mandatory law. He says, for the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah in Chosh and Mishpat, brings the following case. He says, if there's a person, people have got, their reserved seats, which they've bought, which they've purchased, and they've paid for in the shul or in the Beit Midrash, they have the benches, they have the seats where they are. So there's one person who has his seat in the front. He has the first seat, which is closest to the Aron Kodesh. And then there's a person who's next to him, etc. So he says the person who has the first seat in the front, one day he brings a guest into the Beit Midrash. And he wants him to come along and sit next to him. So the guy who normally sits next to him comes along and he says, Ivatana, normally I'm second in line. But now you're sitting, you have first, that's your seat. But you're putting someone next to you, you're pushing me away down to third. I don't want to be third, I want to be second. So he says the Ramah, in such a case, this person, the second one, has a claim. That's his seat, and he can't push him out of it. So he says, if that's the case, maybe we'd say the same thing over here. The person who is always before the one before last says, something's happened to you. Incidentally, your aliyah was meant to be next. It's come before, but now you're pushing me away. I don't want to be chamishi. What bracha do you say for chamishi? Right? I want to be shishi. So therefore, he says maybe you could say that he should get the aliyah. That's his first time. Then says Ramei Simcha, but maybe not. Maybe there's a difference between the cases. There's that case over there, Chosh Mishpat. What's it talking about? But the person has ordinarily that's their seat, and this is now. Something's happened. Something's changed. Something unexpected has come along. You're changing up the order, and now you're saying no, you can't change it. This is what was. But over here, nothing's happened to change things. They should have looked at the calendar at the beginning of the year. It wasn't a secret, right? It wasn't a secret when there's going to be a Shnat Yibur and when the parashiot are going to be. If they just looked, they would have known that it's going to happen this year, that there's going to be this crazy coincidence whereby it's going to be a Shabbat Chazak and Shabbat Shekalim, etc. And therefore you should have known. And he brings a precedent for it. He brings Maran Nedarim. Maran Nedarim brings a case, talks about, it's just been in Daf Yomi, for those who've been through it. So it brings a case whereby, what if a person makes Nidrei Shkaga? You make a neder by accident, if you were aware of something, you hadn't been aware of, etc. So the Rosh brings a case, says a person makes a neder that says, I'm going to fast for the entire year. I'm going to fast every day for the entire year. But there are certain days of the year, no, you can't fast. You've got Shabbat. What about Shabbat and Yom Tov? So the Gemara says, what about Shabbat and Yom Tov? So the Gemara there says, because the person should have known and should have thought about it. He says he didn't think about it. He didn't think about the fact there'll be Shabbatot, there'll be Yamim Tovim when he can't fast on them. So therefore, Yeah, you can't make that's right. You can't make a neder against what's in the Torah. And the Gemara says over here that therefore the person could go to a chacham and they could get hatara for the neder. But the point is that they should have known, they should have considered before that there's going to be Shabbat and Yom Tov. It's not like something new has happened that they didn't know about. So he says same thing over here. It's not that there's something new they didn't know about. This parsha was always going to be read when it was. And therefore he says, suggestion number 2, is that whoever purchased the aliyah first, whoever came first, and that should be the one who that should be the one who got it. But then he continues, and he says maybe not. He says maybe not. He says maybe it could be, in a lot of places, it's the same person who buys his aliyot year after year, right? Something which kind of continues, it's almost like chazaka. But it's they were just saying, for years they've been buying this, they've been buying these aliyot, and this is theirs. For years he's been buying these aliyot. So he says maybe. I'll give you one more source for it. It says Rabbi Simcha, Gemara Bava Basra. Gemara in Perek Chizkat Batim, which says the following. It's fascinating. Again, you go from the Gemara in Chizkat Batim to this in terms of buying the aliyah, but we know all of Torah is one and it's all connected. So he says, what is the case where one person says, you have a field with trees, and one person says, I have a claim to the field, to the karka, and one person says, I have a claim to the ilanot. Right? What is it? So there's a bit of a machloket in the Gemara. The Rashbam over there explains, what's the case? That they purchased this field from somebody else. One person purchased the field and one person purchased the trees. So first opinion in the Gemara says, okay, the one who says he's got the trees, he's got the trees. The one who says he's got the ground, he's got the ground. But the one who has the trees has no claim to any of the karka. And then says the Gemara, no. It says when a person buys the field, what's the point of having the trees if you don't have any of the karka? You're going to say you're going to uproot the tree and then it's still yours. Well, if you uproot the tree, you can't do anything with it. There's no fruit. It's not going to grow. It doesn't. So he says the implication is that when the person bought the trees and the karka, he brought obviously not just the ilanot, but a little bit of the karka that he needed in order for the trees to grow and to be useful. So he says the one who claims the ilanot has got the ilanot, the trees, and half of the karka, half of the ground. And the one who claims the ground has got half of the ground. It doesn't necessarily mean exactly half. It means he has the one as much as needed for those trees around it, exactly. So therefore, why? Because the implication is a person buys, a person sells, they do it buying yafa. So he says same thing over here. Same thing over here. When the person purchased the aliyot, right? The one who purchased that he should have every week, that he should have all 5 of the end of the sedra, meant to say that he should get all 5 aliyot at the end of the sedra. The one who purchased that he should get every week means that he should get every week. And therefore, what's the conclusion? The conclusion is that the one who gets the one which is lifnei acharon, who's the shishi, right? We'll call it the shishi versus the chazak, right? If the shishi over here is going to get that shishi, the one which is lifnei acharon as well, so what's going to be left for the other person who gets the end, who gets the last parsha of every chumash? There's nothing left for him. He's lost his aliyah. Whereas, and he says clearly, when he purchased the aliyot, he didn't mean and wasn't meant to be bought or sold in a way that he wouldn't have an aliyah. So therefore, he says the person who says he's got the last parsha every week, of every chumash, he's going to get that aliyah. The other one who says he gets the second last one, so he gets the one not before the acharon, but he gets the one that is lifnei siyum. So this guy who's every week has been getting his shishi should be getting his chamishi. That's how Rav Meir Simcha Baskins in the Or Sameach. That's what he says at the end after a long back and forth. He says it's obvious and it's clear. That's the din, and that's how it should be. Okay, so just a couple more things about that is Parshat Shekalim. As we said, in this year it comes out. It was not that was all academic because that's not the way. We've already had Parshat Shekalim and we have Rosh Chodesh now. In terms of what is Parshat Shekalim and why do we read it then, and why do we have to do Zecher and Machatzit HaShekel? So there's also an interesting machloket in the Gemara between Rav and Shmuel as to what Parshat Shekalim is. Right? We all know that we read Parshat Shekalim from Parshat Ki Tisa. That's the opinion of Shmuel. Rav actually says, no, that's not what you read. Rav says that for Parshat Shekalim, you would read the Parsha of the Tamid. Parsha of the Tamid offering, meaning not where the Shekalim were given, but where the Shekalim, what they were used for. But again, that's not the way we pass. But the reason why we have this every year is by Rosh Chodesh Adar, is because the Mishnah in Shekalim tells us that on the first of Adar, Mashmiim al Shekalim, that in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, this is when they would announce everybody had to donate their half a shekel, right? Half a shekel, which is given to the Bedek HaBayit, which is given to the fund for the Beit HaMikdash, starting in Nisan. That is when that fund starts to be is used again, and that is to purchase all the korbanot and various other things which are used inside the Beit HaMikdash. So that is one reason why we bring it in, why we read it, and why we mention it before Purim, because this was done in Adar for the collection in Nisan. We know people always sign up at the last minute, so we do it just a month before, and that is when people are going to donate. But there's another reason, which the Gemara says, this is why it's connected to Purim, and this is why we bring Zechel and Machatzit Shekel just before Purim. We say because Haman weighed up his shkalim, he weighed up his money, which he was going to give to Achashverosh in order to get permission to go and to perform his plot and to go and kill all the Jews. And it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that Haman was going to weigh up his shkalim, so that was done in Chodesh Nisan. So before Chodesh Nisan, in Chodesh Adar, we start announcing for our shkalim, so that our shkalim will come before the shkalim of Haman, and that will be a merit for the Jewish people. What exactly does this mean? What that our shkalim come before his shkalim? How does that save us? Why is it just the fact that we announce it and not the fact that we give it? More on that tomorrow. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu lezakot et Yisrael, v'fichach eba lehem Torah mitzvot, shneimar Adonai chavetz man tzidko, yagdil Torah v'yagdil. Amen.